Normally, I don't religiously follow the news about the timepieces that are priced in tens, let alone hundreds of thousands of dollars. I mean, it is very interesting, but definitely not at the top of my must-to-know list. However, this particular news item did grab my attention, and for a couple of reasons. First, I am a bit of a technology nerd. Yes, before I bought LED lights at the back there and camera, I actually worked in IT space. And second, isn't it enough that Rolex already commands about a third of the total watch market? Is Rolex now, in addition to it, is going to turn into some kind of big brother tracking the watches and people that own them? Well, unlike some commentators on this subject, I actually read Rolex's patent that was behind this big news in the first place. So, what's in it? Will Rolex be inserting tracking microchips into our precious Submariners and Daytonas? Well, we have it here. I mean, the link to the patent is in the description. So, let's find out. Hello and welcome back. And for full transparency, this episode is not sponsored by Rolex, but if Rolex would like to sponsor any of my future episodes, well, I will definitely be open to suggestions. And also a quick disclaimer, the information in this video is based on my personal interpretation of the filed patent and on other information available in the public domain. I am of course not privy to details of Rolex's information technology strategy or to the details of the system implementation. You are of course welcome to read the patent yourself. I will leave the link, as already mentioned earlier, in the description of this video. Right, so we have a few things to unpack here. First, what is the point of this invention? What information will be stored and how this information will be actually captured? When is the rollout of this technology? And this is kind of interesting because this might be actually sooner than you think. Also, as far as I understood, there will be two different modes of information access, a so-called service mode and anonymous. So we will have to look what that entails. And will this technology actually guarantee the watch authenticity? And the million-dollar question, will Rolex be inserting a microchip in the watch? And not less important question, what about the owner's privacy and the data about them? And while I think I managed to get answers, or at least my understanding of the answers to most of the above-mentioned questions, there are still some open points, and I will of course cover them as well. So, what's the point of this invention? Well, it is actually quite simple and not as dramatic as it presented by various news outlets. Here is Google Translation from French. It is a method for managing data associated with a timepiece. Yes, as simple as that. In particular, this invention relates to the components of the data management system as well as to the processes of managing this data. Hence, there are three drawings attached to the patent application. First one to cover bits and pieces of the solution, and the other two to actually show the flows of those processes. Now, okay, so what's the big deal then? Okay, other vendors including Omega, Breitling and Panerai, to name a few, already have something similar in place. How is this so different that Rolex actually had to file a patent for it? Well, according to the patent, and I quote, "In known solutions, it is necessary to download an application dedicated to the solution, create a user account and user identifier. These operations are inconvenient for users and are likely to generate security breaches. The purpose of this invention is to provide a method for managing data associated with a timepiece belonging to a user that overcomes the drawbacks mentioned above and improves the management methods without compromising the security of the user's personal data," which I found very interesting. Rolex seemed to be treating the privacy and security of the owner's personal data very seriously here. So, as my initial impressions, this looks like basically a watch papers, but on steroids, so to speak. So, to better understand what information will be stored and how it will be stored, let's have a look at the key components of the system. So we have here a card that will be able to connect to the device via NFC technology, a pretty common technology most of us use on our mobile phones these days. This card will also store an encryption key that would allow initiation of a secure connection to the Rolex server, this guy over here. And here is this differentiating factor from other brands. The communication with the server will be done via normal web browser that is already installed on the phone. In other words, user will not be required to install any specific apps or create an account or remember any special passwords, and as such making the process much more simpler. Okay, the user still might need some kind of password, maybe, and I will come back to it just now. So how information will be getting in the system? Well, according to the patent, the information will be entered normally either by the retailer, I guess the AD at the point of sale, or by the service center representative when the watch is brought in for service. Also, all the service quote communications, watch photographs, and any details of work done will be stored there too. As we can see, Rolex makes a strong distinction between the data store for the watch data and the data store for the customer details. So now that we touched our Rolex card on the phone, provided our phone is connected to the internet, all the information will be displayed in the browser, right? So much for data security. Well, not so fast, and that's where anonymous and the service modes come in. So normally or by default, the connection will always be in anonymous mode, which will only display the watch-related data from the watch data store, so no personal data of the owner is exposed. To access associated owner data, if it is available at all, there will be an additional authentication step, most likely involving a strong authentication process like multi-factor authentication, which will most likely require some kind of password, as I mentioned earlier. So in short, only in a very specific circumstances the owner's personal data can be exposed, and Rolex makes it quite clear that this system is to track the information about the timepieces and not the information about the owners, which, at least in theory, should put our minds at ease. So when can we see this technology live? Well, I think either the whole system or at least some parts of it are being rolled out, at least in some geographical areas already now. If you watched Adrian Barker's recent video when he covers the repairs of his Rolex Explorer, he demonstrates that exact Rolex NFC card which retrieves the details of work done to his watch on his mobile phone. So will this guarantee the authenticity of the watch? Well, this is a tough one, and the answer is, if I understood the patent correctly, no, not really. It will make it more difficult to turn this watch into so-called franking watch when different genuine parts are actually put together to create a watch. And that is because along with the informational data, Rolex of course will store the photos of the original genuine watch. So it will make it more difficult but not impossible. And for the same reason, it will make it more difficult to reuse the serial number on a fake watch too. Again, more difficult, but not impossible. So even if the owner has this NFC card, it is not an ironclad proof of authenticity. And this leads us to the question of whether Rolex will be inserting any kind of micro devices in the actual watches. And as far as I understood the patent, no, there will be no chipping of the timepieces, not as part of this system anyway. And Rolex intends to use the watch serial number as a unique identifier of the timepiece. And Rolex is actually quite clear about it, and I quote, "The unique identifier is, for example, a string of alphanumeric characters comprising, for example, 8 random digits. The unique identifier can be written with a font allowing it to be automatically read by optical means." And I emphasize by optical means, so no any kind of wireless connection to your watch or any kind of wireless reader. The unique identifier can be engraved on the timepiece product, in particular on the watch movement, for example on the plate, or on the watch case, for example on the case middle or flank, or on the bracelet, for example on the clasp. So nothing particularly new, because most of the Rolexes do have a unique serial number engraved somewhere. So here there will be no microchips. Is it positive, or would you rather see Rolex inserting some kind of tracking device in your watch? Well, do let us know in the comments. And while I've got more clarity about what is actually new change from Rolex will bring, as I mentioned at the start, there are still some open questions. Like what about blockchain, for example, which of course is, or rather was, a very popular buzzword in the recent years. Okay, there is a mention that an NFT will be issued for a certificate, which implies that it will be registered on the blockchain, which pretty much guarantees a uniqueness of the registration. However, more information about it I think would be useful. Also, what about the ownership change? What will be the process of updating the details of a new owner? Will the participation of the previous owner will be needed in this process? I mean, the previous owner might simply be no longer available if the watch was part of inheritance, for example. And what if the card is lost? Can it be easily deactivated and replaced, kind of like a lost card of the hotel room? I assume it can be, however, there is nothing explicit about it in the patent. Well, what are your thoughts? Do let us know in the comments. And if you found this video useful, do give us a thumbs up. And of course, don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell. Give me a follow on Instagram, and I'm on Twitter now as well. All the links will be in the description. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.